Hey guys, welcome back to my mind. It's Danielle here, and I'm sitting here with Michelle, my best friend from Santa Monica. So, Michelle, say a smile. She's shy. Just kidding, she's not.
Oh, very.
So anyway, I actually used to live in California. That's how we met, and I'm out here for the weekend, and I'm visiting her and my other best friend Cheyenne. So, a lot of my darkest moments were when I lived in California, and as one of my best friends, she didn't always know about what I was going through. So we thought we'd jump on here today and treat this more of like an interview question. So she's going to ask me questions about, I don't know, we'll see in a minute. But we wanted to do it this way just because it's a little bit more interesting, and from a person who has been in my life for a long period of time, unaware of a lot of things I hid, we thought this would be cool. So, Michelle, the floor is open to you.
Well, Danielle, thanks for having me on your YouTube channel. It's always nice to be here. So we've known each other for about 7 to 8 years at this point. We met when we were like 24, 25, I think. So I wasn't very aware of what she was going through. Can you just like walk us through exactly like what you're experiencing about 7 to 8 years ago, so we can just start from there?
Okay, so if you've watched any of my other videos, I talked about how in my college years things started to progress. So that was when I was like 21 is when I was finishing college, and things started to really sink in that like there's something wrong with me. I have a mind that's thinking different things. I had already been doing like a bunch of compulsions, and I had already had a bunch of obsessions. But then when I graduated college, it started to exasperate then. So back to the question. Sorry, you guys know how I am. I always ramble. But
she's like there's a squirrel girl. But anyway,
my other friend said that to me recently. So 7 to 8 years ago, I was going back to school. No, I wasn't going back to school. I was going to a credential program because I was getting into being a teacher, and you have to have a credential in other states. So during that time, I was back into studying, and I was like, I needed to study a bunch to pass a certain test. So that's when some of my very specific rituals came out, because I would be studying and I could not finish one sentence because I would have a thought that my mom was going to die. And if I didn't stand up, step over a table, pray 5 times, say another routine, like backtrack the thought I had in my head. So that whole entire situation that I just explained probably took like 2 hours. So I was studying, but I couldn't get anything done. So it kind of was like I reverted back to my freshman year of college, where I was put on academic probation. So that was beginning. I didn't get a lot of studying done because of that, and that was probably like 20 when I first moved here, but I was also trying to figure out this state and make friends and whatnot. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so we became friends pretty quickly, and I would say that you didn't tell me about your mental health issues, or challenges, I should say.
You can say issues.
Until a few years in. And so I want to know, like, how did you hide it so well when you're saying that these rituals would take up to 2 hours? Like, how did I not know, as your great friend back then? We would spend a lot of times together. So it's like, did you feel the need to hide it? And, like, how did it feel to hide it?
Yeah, like I hid it all in college, so I just continued to do what I did. So, like, if you were to be like, hey, Danielle, do you want to go get food? I would make up an excuse, like, oh, I can't go because I have whatever I told you back then. I don't know. Honestly, I used to tell people I was tired. I used to tell people I don't feel good.
Schoolwork, gym,
but really,
on a healthy diet.
Yeah, like, I could have done a lot of different things socially, but I chose not to because I knew that I had to fulfill the obsession happening in my head. So that's one reason I hid it. So a lot of times you're like, oh, she's lame. Well, I was lame, but at the same time I was scared to death that if I went out I didn't get everything done. everything that I thought in my head was going to happen. So that's one way. The other way, like when we were hanging out, a lot of people have obsessions in their head, and believe it or not, a lot of people have compulsions in their head. So a lot of my rituals and compulsions were all mental. So does that make sense? Like I would be like, you would be talking, you and her boyfriend at the time would be up front talking, and I would be in the back like cycling through a story in my head, and you'd be like, Danielle, and I'd be like, oh, sorry, I was doing something. I wasn't paying attention. I was on my phone. But really, I would be just like redoing these things, and I'd pause them, and then we'd go eat, and then I'd play them again, like until it was perfect in my head.
How do you pause a thought like that? That seems almost impossible. Like you can't stop thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So the thing, people with OCD, it's like we have like exponential memories. It's like kind of weird. Like you will not forget what you didn't finish. Like it's almost like, it sounds weird, but like you get dressed in the morning, you know, you're like missing like pants or something. Like it feels like you're missing your pants, like you didn't put your pants on, and you have to go back and put your pants on. Like it feels like you're so naked until you go back and finish. There'll be times where that's the other thing. You get warped in different thoughts where you're like, where you go back and you're like, I didn't finish what I thought back then you think of another one. That's how they stack up, and it takes hours. So I would think I would have to fulfill one obsession and then another one, because another one would come, and I'd like literally like be like, okay, I couldn't like keep track, and like until my head was gonna fucking explode. Excuse my language if there's kids watching this, but like that's how it felt.
Yeah, so it sounds like there can be a lot of simultaneous thoughts or compulsions that are ongoing that you need to fulfill.
Yeah.
And that can stack up and lead to you being in a worse and worse state. So to transition, it's like, how did you get out of this and start to open up and to seek help? I think that is a very pivotal state that a lot of people should hear about, so that if they are like the way you were, they know how to transition out of that and into a better way of thinking.
Okay, so it wasn't until like around 23, 24 where I knew there was something like off. Like I knew it wasn't normal to jump over my couch 60 times before I could sleep. Like I knew it wasn't normal that I had a thought of murdering my best friend. Like I these are really like graphic, but like I knew it wasn't normal that I was having thoughts that if I didn't call my mom at 12:13 p.m., she was going to die. Like, these are really abnormal thoughts, but that's, like, what plagued me. So, I think that's because I am who I am. Like, I'm not in another realm. Like I wasn't on drugs. You know what I'm saying? So like when you're on drugs, you like don't really know what's going on, and you're like psychedelic.
Well, it's like hallucinations.
Yeah, like
you're not your true
I
self.
am consciously aware that these are not who I truly know I am in my soul. So at that point was when I was like, I need to like figure out what this is. So like I started like, I had been diagnosed with OCD in the past, so I had already known that was OCD, but I, as an adult, I was like, oh my God, this is taking up so much time. So that, I think the first thing I did was go buy a book. Just because I was like, I had to educate about myself.
So was there like a trigger that made you say like, no, I have to go buy a book today or within the week?
I don't remember like the specific, well, it's interesting you say that. Okay, so getting back to the suicide awareness, I'm just going to be open here. When I tried to, I don't want to use the word commit suicide. I'm working on not using that phrase, as you know. When I tried to die by suicide, I was 21. And that was when I was just like so upset because I couldn't even live and I hated everything that was going on in my head. But at that point, I was just like, this sucks, this is miserable. But it took me like another 3 years to be like, why is this miserable? Like, what in the hell is happening? Why is this so bad? Like, there has to be like a reason. Because a lot of things I would do, I would try to like spiritualize, I don't know if that's a word, like this is happening to me because I'm supposed to do this. But that's what OCD does to you. It makes you keep thinking like more into what's happening when really it's just a thought that came into your head and left. So I guess to answer your question, I don't remember what specifically happened on one specific day, but I know that is what the first thing I did was I was like, I have to educate myself. Because that's just my personality. Like, I'm a very, like, I like to learn, I like to read about things that are interesting, you know what I mean? So I'm just like, I gotta educate myself. Because I was like, if I can understand scientifically what's happening in my brain, maybe it makes sense and maybe it's like okay for it to happen. So that's when I got a book and I was like, okay, let me read about this. This is a real thing. I didn't make this up. I'm not like painting stories in my head.
So this entire time, did your family know how serious it had gotten, or were you just like all on your own in this process?
All on my own. I would tell no one besides therapists. But at that point, I didn't really have a strong therapist. It was all me reading. I have a huge book that's, actually I have like several books about OCD. So it was all just me reading and learning, and I would read other people's stories, and I would go on YouTube, and I would be like, I would type in, and it would freak me out because then I would think that was going to happen to me because their story was slightly different than mine. And that was part of the learning process. I was like, okay, I just have to like realize that this is real. I mean, it's not very, very common, but it's like a thing. Like there's a mental health organization for a reason. So no, I didn't tell my mom and dad. I know my mom knew I was like not right, but like I didn't tell anybody.
So it sounds like throughout this entire process, one of the hardest things was to open up to the people that you were even close with about the state that you were in. If you can go back and tell yourself a few pieces of advice, how would you tell the youth nowadays, like what is the best way to open up to your friends and family about these types of matters?
I think it's hard because it's not a visual and tangible thing. And that was the biggest thing for me is like, I was in my 20s, like I wanted to look a certain way, you know, like everybody feels a certain way. Like you want to have your makeup right, you want to do this, but that's something like if like you have a bunch of acne, which that's a whole other thing, but if you have a bunch of acne, no, seriously though.
It's true.
It's true. That was a whole other issue in my life.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah. She can laugh about it.
It's been a few years.
Yeah. So, but like, that's something where it's like, I have acne, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to talk about it, but I'm embarrassed. This is like literally nothing you can see. And most of the things and thoughts that I had in my head and still have, but now know how to deal with, are so, I'm just going to say weird, because they're weird and it's creepy and it's graphic. If you read about OCD, a lot of the things are gory, graphic, like unsanitary, things like, I think I'm going to rape my best friend's brother. Like, they're not normal things. So if I were to give advice for someone, what do you mean, like in high school or just like in their 20s, or someone who wants to talk about it?
Yeah, like...
Okay, so I just think that you have to preface with education, and like there's authors who have written about OCD and educated themselves, so you have to preface with education and like, hey, like I know there's something going on in my head, like, and I don't know, like for me, I wasn't very confident that it was normal, so I was like, there's something, I didn't want to tell people there's actually something wrong with me, you know, because I was like, this is not normal. So I'm trying to think of, I know I'm going in circles, but I'm actually trying to think of like how, these are really good questions, like how I would actually give someone advice. I think the main thing is like learning that it is a disorder and it's okay to say like, you don't have to share all the details of what you're going on in your head. You just have to say, hey, there's something wrong with me. I want to talk to someone who knows more about it. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think you've ever even heard me say like the details of what I
was
said.
About to say that. Like you've never even shared those details.
Yeah, like it's not something like I'm like, oh, this is really fun to talk about. Like I have really graphic details in my head of weird shit. You know, that's not like a proud thing you'd want to talk about, but like someone who's a therapist, and my best therapist when I was in outpatient treatment, literally she and I would have conversations about things that she knows that would come up in my head, and it would be super like, okay, so what? Like, you want to kill your cat. That's cool. Like, and she would just make it so nonchalant because that's how I used my healing. That's how I healed, and that's how I live now as an exposure lifestyle. Okay, I think I'm going to go shoot. Like, I'm sorry to say this when in this time of life, but like, oh, I have a thought that I'm going to go shoot everybody. That's a scary ass thought when like these are real things, you know? Differentiating that you actually want to do that is a whole nother thing. And I don't want anybody to think like that's, you know what I mean? It's just like, these are just real thoughts that I've had, you know what I mean?
So it sounds like you really need to normalize what's happening. Like as long as you can separate your thoughts that are invisible and irrational from who you actually are in reality, it's okay to normalize those quote unquote crazy thoughts.
Yes. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and are you talking like from a therapeutical CBT, like there's different recognized methods of treating OCD, and like I used ERP, which is exposure response therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's lots of different therapy methods, and now I didn't study this in school, but I just know them from like going to treatment. But yeah, like one of them is normalizing it, and the biggest one is not dismissing them. The thoughts. So if we're talking about like healing and how I went through the treatment program, is like the thing that it's a pattern. So it's like a graph. So if you have a thought, a really anxiety driven thought, it goes like up to here and you are out of your mind. Like any type of anxiety, like whether it's like a thought that I've had just expressed, or if you're just like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass this, I can't pass this test today. You know what I mean? Like any type of anxiety, you're up here. But when you do something to release the thought, you get back down here. But then they spike. And then they spike back down, and that's due to serotonin and all these chemicals in your brain. So it goes like this. So the goal with treating OCD is to have a thought and let it go like up here for a longer period of time, and then it just drops on its own, and then it won't come. So it's like, here's back the graph. It won't come back as frequently. So every time, it's like if you had something. Trying to think of an example. It's like, you know those like Smash games where the thing pops up and you smash it in and it pops right back.
Yeah, the groundhog or the beat the mole. Wait, is it,
so it's like gonna pop right back up and you smash it back down. The goal is to just leave it there, like dead serious. That's
got it. Yeah. Like, so it's kind of just letting it run its course. Yeah. And then once it's run its course, it kind of would run out, maybe figuratively. And then it would just like slowly die down on its own.
And the way you let it run its course is by, there's all these like mantras, for lack of better words, but like things you say out loud, things you do to say to not suppress the thought. So
can you tell when it's about to spike again? Or is it random? You're just like, oh shit, it's happening.
So it depends on your life and stress. It's very, very random. I can tell when I'm spiraling, and in the past, I would smack the whack-a-mole down, and I could tell every time I smacked it, we could tell it's going to pop right back up. You can feel it, like, it never goes away, and it literally is so debilitating. Wow. It feels like your whole entire brain is, like, clogged of smoke, and, like, you cannot do anything. And then, as a normal person, like, I am a very emotional person. Anybody has emotions, but, like, your amygdala kicks in and you get really sad about it. Like, it's like depressing. It's like, fuck this. Like, I don't want this in my life. I want to get it out. And that's where, like, for me, back in the day, like, suicide stepped in, is where it was just like, I don't really see a point of living like this. So that was, like, very debilitating, because it would be like, I just couldn't stop it.
Well, because I think that intuitively you want to just like whack the mole, like just whack it away. But like, it's
use that analogy. It's like kind of
right. It's kind of true. It's just like it pops up and you whack it down.
I like.
But like, it's not it like the way to treat it is anti-intuitive. I mean, counterintuitive.
I like anti.
Thank you. That's why we're best friends.
Yeah. No, it makes no sense that you would treat it like that. And I remember, like, I would even be in sessions and my therapist would be like, here we go. Like, because I would say something to whack the mole and then it would be like, we have to start all over again. So there would be so many uncomfortable situations where I would have to just, like, I'd say out loud 50 times the thought I had. And the thoughts, for me, I had a hard time. I would argue with my therapist. There would be times where I'd be like, I can't explain it, but I could explain it. I would argue with her because I would try to, it's like I was always trying to play like a defense or something. Like I was like a lawyer, like, well, if I say that, then I can't say this. Well, then maybe I can say that one time. And this is what she deals with. I'm like, this is what she does for a living. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was very true. I love that whack-a-mole thought.
So like you got therapy, you learned some ways to help yourself cope with what you have. How, like, do you ever find yourself slipping back into the deep place? The dark?
Not that dark, but I do find myself, I know when I don't practice an exposure lifestyle. And I say that in a broad term, but that's what I was taught. And an exposure lifestyle means, like, exposing yourselves to these horrific thoughts. So by whatever means that may be. Now, for me, it was more of, like, horrific thoughts of killing family members getting in bad car accidents, like very death-related thoughts. Someone else could have relationship OCD and they're constantly fearing that they don't love their partner. Like, there's so many types of OCD. So I feel myself slip a little, but it's not to the point where I can't control it anymore. It's I can very much say, like, okay, I did like 3 rituals and that's not who I am anymore. So I'm going to let those go and I can move forward easier.
Mm-hmm. So be honest about this. How often do you find yourself doing rituals nowadays?
I still have some very, in the mornings. So I'm a big person of practicing gratitude, praying. I do it in more of like a gratitude form. Praying you can do however you want.
And meditating.
I've gotten a lot better at meditating and letting meditation actually do what it's supposed to do and calm. But I will say, I feel like in the mornings, if I don't do my gratitude routine, then something bad may happen that day. So every day, to be honest, I still have some sort of compulsion that I'm fulfilling.
But is that a compulsion?
It's hard
or is
to
it
know.
A routine?
It's hard. And it's hard for someone with OCD to really differentiate that. And there's a lot of things for me that I gave up, like, not that I was the most religious person, but my Judaism, like, I wanted nothing to do with it because a lot of my compulsions also had to do with, like, God and God not loving me. And if I didn't do this, then God would kill, like, it was very, like, God related. It's called religion OCD. And I've never been a religious person. I was Jewish growing up. Like, we did, like, the traditional stuff, but I was not. So I, like, gave up all of that, and I still have a hard time. And I have expressed this to my parents. I still have a hard time, like, doing some sort of faith because, like, I fear that if I do that, like, all of the stuff from the past will come back. And that's not an OCD. That's just, like, shit, I got so far. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, okay. So, anyway, that was pretty cool. I actually really enjoyed saying that, like, on a serious note, just because I don't even think she knew all of those things I used to say and do and talk about just now. So, I find it just really, like, I don't know, it's, like, kind of, like, liberating talking about it now. Mm-hmm. Like, it's, like, even after this, like, we didn't even plan this. Like, I just feel, like, very... like, dang, someone so close to me knows a little bit more and, like, can educate someone else and be a little bit more mindful when someone else may be acting a certain way. Or, like, hey, I don't want to come tonight. And I think I've helped her in that way just because, like, another friend of ours or hers may have some stuff. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just...
Yeah, you've definitely made me a more empathetic person when it comes to mental health stuff. I think that I'm lucky in the sense where I don't have any challenges with that. So knowing you as a friend has really broadened my horizons and my understanding on this matter. And I hope that we can continue to share things like this with each other because it makes me feel closer and it's important for me to know these things about you.
Yeah.
Not just as a friend, but as a human being on this earth together.
Well, thanks, Meech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, your hair looks so good.
Oh, really?
What are you doing?
I actually started using Ouidad. It's literally the best product ever.
It's spelled like Ouidad.
Honestly, this is not a Ouidad ad, but like, get it. Shit, look at them curls.
Game
that's
changer.
The other thing.
We out here.
We
out here.
So that's the other thing is eventually we're gonna continue doing this, but we're gonna get more interviews like about physical weaknesses and just like a lot of different things that people go through. So okay, thanks. It's Ouidad. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.